Okay, so I just want to talk you through some of the terminology and phrasing that I use when I'm talking about this IELTS task to what extent do you agree, or do you agree or disagree style question. I want to talk you through some of the terminology, and I also wanted to talk you through the process that I follow in this demonstration. So to start, with terminology. So I've said this before in other videos, IELTS questions are divided into two parts. Different people refer to them in different ways. Sometimes people would say the question and the statement. Sometimes people say the proposition and the prompt. For our purposes, and with all these videos, I will call the first part of the question the statement. So people living in the 21st century enjoy a better quality of life than in previous centuries. That's the statement. And to what extent you agree or disagree with the statement, that is the task. So there are different task types in IELTS Writing Task 2. You might have a task type which is problems and solutions, for example, or a task type which is a two-part question, or a task type which is similar to this one but not exactly the same, which is do the benefits outweigh the disadvantages, or discuss both views and give your opinion. So this is slightly different. It's a to what extent do you agree or disagree question. And the basic difference is you don't have to answer this in a balanced way. And in fact, very often, not answering in a balanced way produces a much better essay. However, it depends on your opinions and how strongly you feel about the issue. I'll talk about that more when we come to the process. In terms of content, what do we need to be thinking about in terms of content? One of the really big things is your position. Now, the examiner's materials, which I will, the examiner's document that they refer to, which I'll show you when I talk about the process, has very clear statements that they must be able to see your position throughout. They must understand your position on the topic throughout. That means at the beginning, right through the main body, and at the end. So when I talk about your position, what I mean is whether you are for or against the statement that's made here. People living in the 21st century enjoy a better quality of life than in previous centuries. Your position is the extent to which you agree or disagree with that. It's really important that you know it before you start writing. This is not an essay to analyze and come to terms and make a decision during the essay. It's an essay where you want to know your position from the outset and argue and support your position throughout, even if you are going to write a two-sided argument. When I talk about argument, I mean so a point to be made on either side of the debate with the development of that argument. In terms of paragraphing, there are different paragraph structures you can use. I wouldn't recommend more than 5 paragraphs and definitely not less than 4. But for the purposes of simplicity, the demonstration that I show you is a 4-paragraph demonstration, a 4-paragraph essay. You might divide the first main body paragraph into 2 paragraphs, or if you've got very strong arguments on a particular side that you want to extend, you could do 2 paragraphs on one side and 1 paragraph on the other. But for the purposes of simplicity, 4 paragraphs is absolutely fine to answer a question like this. Within each paragraph, I'll talk about introducing an idea and developing an idea. What sort of language do you need for this? Well, it's the same as for all IELTS. Think about your tenses. This question asks about the present and the past. So there's a real clear signal there. Brilliant. I'm going to show off loads of past tense when I talk about life in the past, loads of different present tenses, including the present perfect tense. You can find lots of information about that online if you haven't come across it. But the present perfect tense is really useful because it's for talking about the present in relation to the past. For this essay, there'll be lots of present perfect as well. Specific language to the task type of to what extent do you agree or disagree. There's lots of language of arguing, of expressing opinions. There can be no doubt that life for many is better than it was in the past, or I believe life in the past was more harmonious, or it cannot be denied that, this arguing language. Now, the other concept, and this comes up a lot in academic language, it's a really useful idea. Hedging is where I make a statement, but I distance myself from the statement. So by saying, for example, admittedly, there are many advances of modern life that we couldn't live without. Here, I am distancing myself from the statement. I'm not saying this is my opinion. And that's really useful to signal to the examiner when you are, particularly if you're writing a two-sided essay, when you are talking about the other side or when you're talking about your own side. If I say, it is often said that ABC, I'm signaling to the examiner that this is not necessarily my opinion. I am putting it in here to frame my own position. Okay, let's think about the process that I follow when I go through, when I do the demonstration of this essay. So in terms of planning, I've deliberately chosen a question that I don't have very strong feelings about. Generally, when I see an IELTS question, I immediately have a sense of one side or the other. And if that's the same for you, then you should just go with that. When the question says, do you agree or disagree, or to what extent do you agree or disagree, you don't have to write a two-sided essay. If you look at the question, if you immediately have a position, then just go into your reasons and your arguments. Try to think of 3 to 4 arguments to support your position. If you have 4, try to put them into pairs, because you're going to write 2 main body paragraphs. If you can have kind of themes to your 2 main body paragraphs, that's better. It's going to get you more marks in terms of cohesion and coherence. If you've only got 3 sort of decent or strong arguments, well, think about which one's the strongest, because that's probably going to be on its own in one paragraph with the other 2 together in the same paragraph. So if you immediately have a position, if you immediately have an idea and a feeling about the question, then you're going to write a one-sided essay, and you don't need to talk about the other side. You could just got lots of strong arguments of your own. If you don't immediately think, if you don't immediately think of a particular side that matches your opinion, don't try to make a decision on your position until you've outlined arguments on either side, and that process should help you to choose a side. So think of at least 2 arguments on either side, look at your arguments together, decide which pair of arguments is the strongest, because that is going to be your position. I'll stress again, you really want to make sure you have a position. You're going to write a two-sided essay, but you still need to take a side. When you come to writing, the second sentence or right at the end of your introduction, it might be the 3rd sentence if you take longer to paraphrase the statement, but when you write your introduction, you need to state your position right there. So it's no good waiting for all of the argument until you've written all of the arguments to conclude with your position. You must have that position throughout. Now, I just want to demonstrate that a little bit, or talk a bit about why that is. This document is the public version of the band descriptors used by the IELTS examiners, and I want to look particularly here at task achievement. So in terms of task achievement, if we just look down at the second bullet point, okay, for an 8, presents a well-developed response to the question with relevant, extended and supported ideas. Now that's to be able to develop a response to the question, you ought to have a starting point which has a position. Notice for a 7, presents a clear position throughout the response. That's a really clear marker for the examiner. If they're reading your essay at any point and they don't know what your actual position is, then you're going to be losing marks on task achievement. You might be given this, for example, presents a relevant position, though the conclusions may become unclear or repetitive, or perhaps even you might have really fantastic language, but the examiner might consider that here you haven't, if you haven't put your position clearly from the beginning, they might consider that you've expressed a position, but sorry, the second point for task achievement for band 5 expresses a position, but the development is not always clear. There may be no conclusions drawn, or even worse than that, presents a position, but this is unclear. So that idea of position, it appears throughout the band descriptors for task achievement, and no matter how strong you are in those other areas, if you're getting penalized for not having a position in your task achievement, it's going to have a dramatic impact on your overall score. So get into the habit, whatever your essay, if it's two-sided, if it's one-sided, make that statement of position at the end of your introduction. In my opinion, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay, when you come into doing the writing, we've got a one-sided argument. Sorry. One-sided argument or a two-sided argument. One-sided essay or two-sided essay. The essay that I've written in my demonstration is a two-sided. I deliberately chose a question that I didn't have strong feelings about. So you'll see that I begin by introducing the weaker argument, the opposite side from my own. I use a hedging structure there. I used admittedly. So again, as I mentioned before, this is a sentence that you make to show the examiner that this is not necessarily your opinion, but it's framing your opinion itself. So you're distancing yourself from the sentence. Admittedly, there are many complications with modern life. Well, I have to distance myself from that statement because in my introduction, my position stated modern life is better than in the past. So hedging structure is really, really useful there. Going into the second main body paragraph, I'm going to go on the stronger argument. I'm going to go on the argument that matches my side. That means that when I lead into the conclusion, the strongest arguments, the arguments for the position that I've taken, are most recent, and it flows more naturally into the conclusion. Of course, if you write a one-sided argument, it's much simpler, but as I mentioned before, try to, if you've got 4 arguments, try to pair them together so that each paragraph at least has kind of a theme to it. It's not just a list of arguments, if that makes sense. In the conclusion, again, once you've got through the main body of your work, it should be reasonably simple to write a conclusion. Summarize your arguments. That's good if you've written a one-sided argument and each paragraph has kind of a theme, then you can summarize those themes in your conclusion. In conclusion, we can see that both in terms of financial stability as well as quality of life in general, life is better now than in the past. For example, if you've written a two-sided essay, you can summarize your arguments by making reference to the fact that there are arguments on either side. And then fundamentally importantly, again, because we want to have that position stated throughout, restate your position at the end. That's why I agree with the statement or disagree with the statement. As usual for IELTS, it's 40 minutes for writing the task 2. You want to get into the habit of being able to do the actual writing itself in about 30 minutes. So 5 good minutes planning, getting your ideas clear before you start writing. It makes it so much easier to do that writing efficiently, effectively, and accurately in that time. And 5 minutes at the end to do some proofreading, go through, pick out mistakes, think about areas. You may notice you've been repeating words a lot, so there's an opportunity to avoid repetition and to change your phrasing and show off better paraphrasing as well. So 5 minutes to plan, 30 minutes to write, 5 minutes to proofread. 30 minutes might seem like a short time to write 250 to 300 words, but trust me, 30 minutes writing a well-planned essay is much easier than 40 or 50 minutes writing an essay that you haven't started to plan properly. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through and demonstrate the process for writing a "to what extent do you agree" or "do you agree or disagree" style question for IELTS Writing Task 2 essays. So I'll share my screen with you. And the question that I've chosen to demonstrate this with is one that I don't have a particularly strong feeling on either side for. So when I look at the question straight away, I'm gonna brainstorm my ideas, and from that I'm going to decide on what position I should take. First, when I look at the question, immediately I'm starting to think of which parts of the question I will need to paraphrase, which parts of the statement I'll need to paraphrase. So people living in the 21st century, better quality of life, previous centuries. When I get to my first sentence of writing, I'm going to be trying to look for ways to paraphrase those things. Now, let me read through the question again and start to brainstorm my ideas. So, people living in the 21st century enjoy a better quality of life than in previous centuries. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? Give reasons for your answer, include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. Okay, first thing, the obvious way to plan this is to divide it into two sides. So the first side is life, not just life in the past, but arguing in favor of life in the past. So life in the past was better because, and life in the present was better because. Okay, firstly, why life in the past? Well, my feeling is that life in the past was simpler than now, and I need to think about why. I might argue that in the past there were social rules and norms to follow, so I didn't need to think for myself so much. I might also argue that we lived more in touch with our surroundings than we do in the modern age of computers. But the arguments for the present are obvious, and when I start to outline them, it seems that they are stronger arguments. The biggest of these is obviously the medical advances, right? People died younger in the past, and we have access to hospitals now that we didn't in the past. That's an obvious and strong argument. I could also talk about poverty, right? There are fewer people living in poverty now than in the past. So even though when I first looked at the question, I didn't have an obvious position to take, now that I've outlined my arguments, one side seems to be slightly stronger than the other. I'm still going to write a two-sided essay, but it's really important that you do choose a position and do that before you start writing. The examiner wants to see that your position is clear throughout. So when I start writing, you'll see where I will put this into, or where I will state my position, and I need to know that before I start writing. So move and make some space. I'll write at the top. In my first sentence, I want to paraphrase the statement of the question and refer to the issue being spoken about here. So I highlighted people living in the 21st century, better quality of life, previous centuries. So I'll start by paraphrasing that by saying modern life is considered by many to that's fine, actually. I've mentioned people living in the modern life, people living in the 21st century, better quality of life, offer many benefits, previous centuries compared to the past. So my second sentence, I want to demonstrate that I've understood what the task of this question is, which is agree or disagree, and I want to state my position here, even if I'm writing a two-sided essay, which I am. So okay, so by using a phrase like I believe, I agree, I'm showing that I'm stating my opinion, and I've put a position there, even though I'm arguing a two-sided essay. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my first main body paragraph. And now, because I'm going to argue for the statement, because I'm going to argue that 21st century living is better, I'm going to talk about the other side first. That means when I move on to my second main body paragraph, I will be putting my stronger arguments, which will lead more naturally into my conclusion. So I need to make these arguments about it being simpler and how we're more in touch with our surroundings. So beginning a paragraph, I want to start with a topic sentence, something simple to show what I'm planning to do or what I'm trying to do with this paragraph. Because I'm in this paragraph, I'm arguing the opposite side to the overall essay. I'm arguing for life in the past here. I want to use a structure to show that. So I could say, for example, admittedly, there are many, did I use the word complications? Yes, I did. There are many challenges of modern living. I said modern living, modern life, modern living, which didn't exist in the past. Okay, so that's a short, simple sentence. Then I can develop this with more advanced language. So, thanks to the strong norms and social rules that governed behavior, ancestors were not burdened by pressure of making career choices or competing for social advancement. That dominates the lives of so many people today. In addition, without the advances, people much more harmony with their immediate I'm going to conclude this paragraph with a conditional sentence which refers back to the question of comparing life in the past with life in the present. So if it were easier let's do it the other way around. Mitigate. Okay, now I come to my main arguments. So I want some kind of pivoting structure to show that I am contrasting these arguments and that I'm moving on to, that I'm contrasting the arguments that I've just made with a new set of arguments, which are my real view. However, it cannot be denied that the advancements of the last decades have So, topic sentence: it cannot be denied that advancements of the last decades have made a dramatic improvement to our lifestyles. Advancements in medicine and healthcare, not to mention the advancements in medicine and widespread access to healthcare. My other argument was, okay. Not only this, rapid the wealth generated by trade such advances have contributed such advances have, got a bit stuck there, contributed immeasurably human happiness and being. Overall, so I'm moving on to my conclusion. I'll use a phrase like in conclusion, simple one to begin with. In conclusion, while many may nostalgically look past when So what have I said in my conclusion there? I'm just summarizing my argument that I can see both sides. I have outlined both sides in the essay. So the structure of this sentence reflects the structure of the essay by talking about looking to the past, to complain about the problems of modern living, and how actually that if we had to give up the benefits of modern living, that wouldn't that doesn't make sense. So I've written a sentence which summarizes my essay and follows the structure of my essay. I'm just going to conclude by making it really clear my position and referring back to the question again with a final sentence. That's why I agree that life in the 21st century was better than that of past. Okay, I'll do a quick word count. It's 290 words, which is really for task 2, you want to be trying to get closer to 300 than 250. 250 is the minimum word count. So 290 is a pretty good amount. So advice, take time to plan. You have to do this in 40 minutes. It's taken me about 25 minutes to do that process. To do it in 40 minutes, don't hurry your planning. Really taking a good 5 minutes to get really clear ideas out on paper before you start writing makes the writing much clearer, much better. You're going to get more points in terms of task achievement. Your structure is going to be clearer. So don't hurry the writing, the planning. An essay plan is not just 4 words, intro, arguments for, arguments against. You have to have your arguments in there and planned. And fundamentally, for this type of essay, you must know your position. And if you don't have a position, choose a position before you start writing, because as you can see, when you get to the very second sentence of your essay, you need to put that that statement in there. It's clear throughout, and it's repeated at the end as well.